Today, we're picking the best duo out of the 16 greatest duos in Marvel history. This is going to be a brutal lineup. Get your popcorn ready, because we're starting right now. Match 1. Tony Stark and Peter Parker. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton. This is going to be a tough comparison. The moment Tony Stark walks into Peter's room in Civil War, and we see their first exchange, it felt like watching a father and a son. Honestly, even Tony Stark's relationship with his own daughter Morgan paled next to what he had with Peter. There's also one of the MCU's best lines ever, Tony telling Peter, "If you're nothing without this suit, then you shouldn't have it." That's unforgettable. And I haven't even mentioned their space adventures. Here's the best part, though. Even after Tony Stark has passed away, his legacy, like the glasses he leaves behind, keeps showing up in every film. By the way, I'm curious what you think. Do you think Peter stayed too much in Tony Stark's shadow? Let's move on, friends. On the other side, Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton's story runs very deep. Since the very first Avengers film, we've been shown that pure affection and friendship between them. The farm scene in Age of Ultron, and the Vormir moment in Endgame. Both of them volunteer to sacrifice themselves for the Soul Stone, but in the end it's Natasha who goes. That scene is incredibly emotional, but I still think Tony and Peter are the more dominant duo here. Because the Tony and Peter effect isn't limited to just the two of them. It forms the emotional backbone of the entire MCU. Drop your pick in the comments and let me know who you're sending to the final. Moving on. Match 2. Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes. Thor and Loki. Steve and Bucky have been close friends since the first Captain America film. They were close even before the super soldier serum, back in their earlier days. Honestly, that history puts them in a different category for me. And that scene where they part ways on the train was incredible. When we met Bucky again in a different form as the Winter Soldier, we didn't even recognize him. But to be honest, Bucky's story in the comics is much deeper and more interesting. The MCU could have done a much better job portraying him. On the other side, there's Thor and Loki. From the moment we met Thor in the MCU, we also met Loki. Loki was written brilliantly, from his scheming ways in the first film all the way to his sacrifice in the later films. And it's incredible that we still haven't fully figured out the bond between Thor and Loki in any single movie. This duo, sometimes good brothers, would have us going, no way did they betray each other again? Within a short span of time. I think the clear winner of this match is Thor and Loki. Are we on the same page? Match 3. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. Rocket and Groot. This matchup is going to be brutal because Tony and Steve have always been the MCU's most argued about duo. The moment they first meet in Avengers, the personality clash between Tony and Steve is literally throwing sparks. And it's incredible that this duo's conflict is what splits the team in two and causes civil war. If you think about it in terms of leadership, who do you think would actually lead a team better, Tony or Steve? Moving on the other side, we have literally the most adorable duo in the universe, Rocket and Groot. I actually compare Rocket to Tony Stark quite a bit. Both are geniuses, both are funny, and both are a little arrogant. But the bond between Rocket and Groot runs much deeper. The tension between Tony and Steve never really gave us the feeling of a true duo. So, I think this round goes to Rocket and Groot. Am I wrong? Let's move to the next match.
Match 4. Wanda Maximoff and Vision, Scott Lang and Hank Pym. Sometimes I can't help but wonder, if it weren't for Vision, would Wanda have become Scarlet Witch? From that angle, this feels like an important duo. Also, even though Wanda loved Vision deeply, that scene where she's forced to take the Mind Stone to keep him alive was devastating. On the other side of this match, we have Scott Lang and Hank Pym, a mentor and student duo, and the MCU loves a good mentor-student dynamic. Honestly, the friendship between Scott and Hank should have been written more like a father and son relationship, but the bond between them ended up being written pretty shallow. Even the Ant-Man character himself is one of the things I think the MCU never quite managed to portray properly. Why? Because Marvel heroes who draw inspiration from nature tend to be loved more by audiences. The reason Spider-Man is loved so much is that he has a spider's powers. You can find hundreds of online theories today about the specific spider that bit Spider-Man. Spider-Man has spider-like reflexes, he's fast, strong, and has webs. But when we look at Ant-Man, we just see someone who shrinks thanks to a suit. If they had leaned into the world of ants instead, he could have been legendary. So, the winner of this match is obviously Wanda and Vision. Do you agree? Match 5. Peter, Quill and Gamora, Deadpool and Wolverine. The MCU loves characters without special powers who train themselves, and honestly, so do I. A Peter Quill's story and Gamora's story feel warm to us in that sense. But after Gamora is sacrificed for the Soul Stone and we get a past version of her instead, the bond between her and Peter Quill stopped feeling warm to me. Honestly, I went cold on it. On the other side, we have a literally legendary duo, Deadpool and Wolverine. Oh my god. When the MCU dressed Wolverine in his comic-accurate suit and we saw him like that, I genuinely cried. I'll admit it. Come on, be honest, didn't that happen to you too? Getting to see their decades-long, bickering enemies but closest friends comic book dynamic again was wonderful. The winner of this match is Deadpool and Wolverine, because humor is everything. Match 6, Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson. This one's going to be a bit controversial. We met Steve and Sam in Winter Soldier, and in Endgame, when Steve hands his shield to Sam, we witness a moment where the legacy changes hands. A lot of people criticized this moment because the bond between Steve and Sam hadn't been developed deeply enough. If the MCU had focused more on Sam and Steve, a lot of people wouldn't be debating this. On the other side, Bucky and Sam. If you watched The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you'll agree with me. I think the bond between Bucky and Sam was written better than the one between Steve and Sam. So the best duo in this match is definitely Bucky and Sam. By the way, I have to say it was pretty ridiculous that Sam got rejected for a loan from the bank. Even without anything else, Tony's legacy was already in Sam's hands by that point. Getting help from that shouldn't have been so hard. Match 7, Charles Xavier and Erik Lehnsherr, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. This matchup is going to be interesting. The friendship between Charles and Erik was written beautifully. Seeing them in every version of themselves, young and old, and constantly questioning between the two of them who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, that's a legendary duo. On the other side, there's Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. When you say Iron Man, after the armor, the next thing that comes to mind is definitely Pepper. In fact, Pepper might be one of the things that makes Tony Stark Iron Man. But if we're looking for real character depth, the winner of this match is definitely Charles and Erik. Pepper is an important character, but not on that level. So, what matters more to you, philosophical conflict or romantic loyalty? Match 8, Clint Barton and Kate Bishop, Gamora and Nebula. I think the Hawkeye series was one of the MCU's best projects. Getting to know Hawkeye up close was wonderful. Also, the idea and the story that a hero doesn't need special powers to be a hero was really well done. The MCU made a quick start when it comes to the new generation of Avengers, Thor's daughter, Hulk's son, the new Ironheart character, and others I can't even think of right now. Honestly, out of all these new Avengers, the one who felt warmest to me was Kate, because the mentor-student relationship between her and Clint was written really well. On the other side of this match are Gamora and Nebula, Thanos' adoptive daughters, who grew up in competition with each other and, in Endgame, get to reconnect through versions of themselves from a different timeline. But like I said earlier, the past version of Gamora's character is so simple and surface level that any duo built around her just doesn't appeal to me. So the winner is Clint and Kate, because that mentorship and humor balance feels literally so much fresher and more fun. Round 1 is done. Now let's put the winners up against each other and head into the quarterfinals, and things are about to get really tough. Tony Stark and Peter Parker, Rocket and Groot. Rocket and Groot are one of the MCU's best creations. Especially the emotional depth hiding underneath Rocket's cocky personality, and his bond with his friends, is wonderful, but Rocket and Groot's story doesn't have a huge impact on the MCU's overall storyline. Its impact mostly stays within their own little world. But Peter's story, growing up under Tony's mentorship, goes on to influence the multiverse and extends all the way through to the Infinity War legacy. So the winner is Tony Stark and Peter Parker, advancing to the semifinals. Thor and Loki, Wanda Maximoff and Vision. This match is genuinely tough, because both duos deal with the tragic family theme. The Wanda and Vision story feels like it exists purely to turn Wanda into Scarlet Witch. Also, and this is an important point in WandaVision, we never actually watched the story between the real Vision and Wanda. What we watched was the Vision inside the world Wanda created with her reality warping magic. So we basically never really got to see the real bond between Wanda and Vision, aside from a few glimpses the MCU gave us. Plus, Wanda didn't actually love Vision, she just wanted to be part of the show she watched as a kid. And in later MCU films, Wanda is chasing after her children, not Vision. So the winner of this round is Thor and Loki. Deadpool and Wolverine, Charles Xavier and Erik Lehnsherr. This one's going to be tough. Let's reason it out. If the MCU made a solo film for Charles and Erik, would it make as much money as Deadpool and Wolverine? I'll answer that, no. Charles and Erik are, without question, one of the best Marvel duos, but unfortunately they don't really stand a chance against Deadpool and Wolverine. Winner, Deadpool and Wolverine, advancing to the semifinals. Do you think fun should beat philosophy here, or is there an injustice happening? Let me know in the comments. Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson, Clint Barton and Kate Bishop. Clint and Kate are a great duo, but the show where we got to watch Sam and Bucky together was both complex and realistic, because both of them had to deal with heavy baggage from the past. Winner, Bucky and Sam, advancing to the semifinals. Now let's move on to the semifinal excitement, because the 4 remaining duos are truly legendary. Semifinals. Thor and Loki, Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson. Bucky and Sam made it this far, but the impact of the Thor and Loki duo on the MCU's main universe is unquestionably greater. Winner, Thor and Loki, advancing to the final. Tony Stark and Peter Parker, Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't want to do this. This is genuinely so hard, the toughest decision of the whole tournament. The bond between Tony and Peter is incredible. It was also amazing, in a way, that Tony's influence on Peter's life keeps going even after Tony's death. But on the other hand, Peter needed to become independent from Tony at some point too. On the other side, Deadpool and Wolverine captured an energy unlike anything we'd seen before. And getting to see them come together was something thousands of comic book readers, myself included, had been waiting for. Winner, Deadpool and Wolverine, advancing to the final. And here's our final matchup: Deadpool and Wolverine, Thor and Loki. And here we are. On one side, brothers from Norse mythology with over a decade of MCU legacy behind them. On the other, 2 anti-heroes who've been bickering in comics since 1991 and 1974, and who shook movie theaters in 2024. The Deadpool and Wolverine matchup affected all of us deeply. It practically breathed new life into the MCU. But let's be honest, the Loki and Thor relationship has been part of nearly every story in the MCU's main universe since the very beginning. In other words, if you took Loki and Thor out of the picture, a huge number of important MCU main universe stories would simply disappear. So the champion is Thor and Loki. So, what do you think? Do you agree with how this tournament played out? Don't forget to drop your own ranking in the comments, and if you want a part 2 of this series, let me know there too, because if you want it, a part 2 video will happen. Also, I keep posting comparison posts in my channel's community tab where we discuss everything about the MCU.